English isn't easy, and sometimes it seems like no matter what you do, you just aren't getting any better. In today's video, let's talk about some of the things that can make it difficult for you to speak English and what you can do to get better, so don't get discouraged, everyone. Are you ready to find out some of the ways that can make it difficult for you to speak English and some of the ways that are going to make it easier for you to improve your English speaking? If so, then let's get into it. English has a lot of grammar and rules, and a lot of those grammar and rules have so many different exceptions and irregularities. Its various patterns and structures add a layer of complexity and nuance to the language. With so many rules and so many exceptions to those rules, it can be easy to understand why learning English can be difficult. Even native speakers can have difficulty keeping up and learning everything that you need to know to become a great English speaker. For example, most plural forms of English end with an S or an ES, right? Then, why does child become children, ox become oxen, or why does mouse become mice? I remember when I first started learning as a child in elementary school, so I could only imagine what it must feel like to be a non-native speaker of English, seeing these different rules actually play out in a real conversation. Another example is stress patterns. English is a stress-based language, so just by changing the stress that you use on certain words, you can change the meaning of that word altogether. Take, for example, the word record. If you're using it as a noun, then you would use it with the pronunciation record, as in those old items that we used to listen to music on. Here, the stress is on the first syllable of the word record. However, if we use it as a verb, then the stress would be on the second syllable, and we're going to pronounce it as record. So maybe now you're starting to see how difficult it can be to understand and speak in English. It definitely takes some getting used to, and this is going to lead us into the next reason that I think it's difficult for people to speak in English. Pronunciation in English is very hard. There are so many different ways that you can pronounce words in English, and it can be so hard for you to have to keep up and remember every little rule and rule change. We have many words that use silent letters, such as no, wrist, or debt. You have to use every letter when you're spelling these words, but they also have, as you can see, letter sounds that aren't pronounced out loud. And this can be confusing, I know. I can think of so many times when I was little or in other situations that someone pronounced the word cano when they were trying to say the word no. There are also homographs, and these are words that have similar spellings but then very different sounds depending on how you're using it. For example, lead means to guide, but lead is a type of metal. Wind is a gust of air, but wind means to turn. The only way that you can check what is and isn't correct in English is to check out the way that native speakers are using these words. But even that can be difficult depending on the native speaker and where that person lives. For example, I'm from the US and I lived most of my life before coming to Japan in California. The way that I use English may be slightly different from a person that's living in another part of the country, say for example, Texas or New York. This is one of the things that makes English so great and yet so difficult to speak at the same time. The most important thing here is to make sure that you can listen to and hear from as many different English speakers as possible. Because of the things that we have talked about before up until this point, you may just be too afraid to speak. You might feel judged on your English abilities, or maybe you just won't have the same level of confidence in your native language as you do in English when you're just not sure about all of the different rules, their variations, and their exceptions. All of this combined can just really hold you back from even trying out the things that you do know in English. Maybe you don't want to make any mistakes, so you just shy away from trying out anything at all. Even as a native speaker, there's lots of situations where I might not know as much about the topic, or I just don't have enough confidence about what I want to say. But if I was to avoid trying to speak altogether, I'd miss out on so many great and interesting conversations. I think it's so much better for you to try out your English, make a mistake, and then correct yourself later if you need to. The more conversations that you're a part of, I think you'll start to notice that unless you just really are making big mistakes to the point where the other person can't understand you at all, the conversation's usually going to continue if you're just making small mistakes here and there. The most important thing here is the connection that you're having with that other person. And remember, you don't need to be perfect, you just need to be understood. As long as you're able to understand that other person, then you're going to be well on your way to having a great conversation. Everything else will get better with time, so just get out there and try to use what you do know. Not knowing cultural references can hold you back from understanding English. We are all from different places and cultural backgrounds. Even people living in the same country will be very different from one another. One example of cultural references are jokes. You can really understand a lot about a country and a lot about its people by its humor. Comedy styles that are funny in the US won't necessarily go over the same way in the country that I live in now, Japan. The way that many people use language is tied to their culture and experiences, and English is no different. I remember talking to a lady in Japan who had grown up for a few years of her childhood around the same time that I was a child in the US. The references and examples that she used when she spoke in English were very easy for me to understand because there are things that I knew too, and this is the power of cultural references when it comes to speaking. If you can understand more about someone's culture, it's going to be easier for you to have fun, interesting conversations. Get to know more about culture through its movies, its books, and music, and really see how much your English conversations improve. Are there any other things that make it difficult for you to speak in English? If so, how about let me know down in the comments below. Also, if you got any benefit out of this video, please share it with someone else that you think it could help. And if you're interested in learning more about how to improve your English listening, check out this video right here. Thank you guys so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. See you.